made this a self-perpetuating, constantly expanding policy disaster. The first thing was the politicians got into it. And they said, you cops are doing a great job. But you know, if you arrest just a few more people, we promise we'll back you 100%. We'll create the harshest laws that ever existed. Mandatory minimum sentences, and 3 strikes you're outlaw. You only have to deal with these people a couple times, they'll go to prison for life, case closed, problem solved. We said, well, we'll try that. If there's nothing else to work, we'll try that, sure. The second thing that happened in 1980 is we got a new president in there, President Ronald Reagan, and he loved what we were doing. He says, you cops are doing a great job, guys, but you know, you're going about this from the wrong angle. He says, you've got to think about this like it's an economics equation. You know, supply and demand. He says, you're on the supply side arresting dealers, and you should be on the demand side arresting users. Because if you arrest enough users, you'll frighten them away. And of course, if there are no users out there, there won't be any dealers. We said, well, that has a certain ring of logic to it, I guess. We'll try that. Well, that was our downfall, folks. You could see how rapidly those arrests increased. By 20 years later, we had quadrupled the number of people we were arresting for nonviolent drug offenses, kicked it up to a little over 1.9 million people every year. Think of that number. What's your population here? 5.3 million? Is that it? In 3 years, we arrest more people in our country for non-violent drug offenses than you have living in your country. Think of how many people's lives are being ruined. And it's not just that person that's arrested. When you arrest a breadwinner in a house, that entire family goes down. When you remove parents and make children orphans of the state, you're guaranteeing the next generation of kids addicted to hard drugs. We have to stop this. Look what we're arresting them for, in the center there on the top. 44% of those arrests are for marijuana violations. And all the way over on the right, because we were told, don't just arrest dealers, arrest users too, 88% of marijuana arrests are for possession. And that's what we're destroying those folks' lives for. Something wrong here. This is what we spent. 40 years we've been fighting this war. We spent $1 trillion on the war. I understand you don't even have that big. $1 trillion. Almost $1.5 trillion, actually. It's a lot of money to spend, and you know what we got for it? This is the cumulative arrests in the United States from 1970 to today, 39 million and counting. 39 million lives. Well, that's a lot of money to waste, that's a lot of lives to waste, but thank goodness at least we've had some effect on the rate of addiction in the United States, because today only 1.3% of the population. But that is the only statistic that has never changed in 100 years. 1.3% were addicted when all drugs were legal. 1.3% was addicted right before we started a war on drugs. And 1.3% is addicted after, 40%. Here's some stats that really have changed. And any country that works on this prohibition like we're working on, will see these same stats change. This is our clearance rate for arrests in my country. And of course, if that's the clearance rate, that means the opposite of that is the unsolved crimes, right? 40% of all murders in my country are unsolved. 60% of all rapes and arsons unsolved. 75% of robberies are unsolved. 46% of even assaults. And if you want to commit a property crime, you're almost guaranteed to walk away free. 83% of property crimes are unsolved. Now, let me point out to you that in 1963, the police in my country were correctly credited with solving 91% of the murders. In 1963. Today, we sold 61%. We could make a 1/3 drop. How could we become so incompetent? Huh? The 20,000 police, judges, and prosecutors at LEAP believe what has caused this can only relate to one thing. We have far more police per capita than we had in 1963. They're better trained, they're better educated, they're better paid. They have technology at their disposal, like it came from Star Wars. There's only one thing that can make that difference. In 1963, we weren't fighting a war on drugs. Today, our police staff are spending so much energy and time and money chasing around a lot of non-violent drug offenders that we do not have time to protect citizens from violent criminals, from child molesters, from things that really count. And we say, let us get back to doing what we do well and what really counts. How has the war on drugs changed drug availability in our schools? That's the one that I really worry about because I'm a granddad now, grandfather. My kids are all grown. And I'm not worried about them, but I got a lot of grandchildren. I don't want to see one of them using any kind of drug, whether it's a legal drug or an illegal drug, until they're an adult and can make a rational decision about what they want to put in their own body. And at that time, I believe it's not up to the police to tell them what to do once they're an adult. If anybody is going to have any say on that, it should maybe be their family, or their friends, or maybe social workers, or perhaps medical practitioners, maybe even religious practitioners. But never, ever the police. We don't have any right to do it, and it's only when we are assigned to try to protect every adult from themselves that we end up with the kind of problems we have today, with the kind of corruption of our police officers that we have today. You never see that kind of corruption in a murder case or rape case. It's only in a drug case. It's only when you're dealing with consensual crimes. That's when it happens. Let's get back to the schools. You see here what our kids say. For the last 10 years, our children have reported that it's easier for them to buy illegal drugs than it is to buy beer and cigarettes. So what are we spending $70 billion a year for? Huh? Why is that, do you imagine? Well, I'll tell you why it is. It's because beer and cigarettes are legal commodities, and they're sold where we regulate their sale. And if a young person goes in there to buy them, somebody says, hey, are you old enough to buy this dope? Let me see an ID. And if they don't have an ID, they throw them out. Now, you know that doesn't happen down on the street corner. That dope dealer doesn't want to see an ID. He wants to see one thing. Show me the money. And as soon as they've seen that money, it doesn't matter if that child is 4 years old, they're going to get the drugs. Because we have recorded cases of exactly that happening. How much money are we talking about here? Anyway, spent around the world on illegal drugs in a year. You have to buy a cop? You better believe it. Happens many times every day. Enough to buy a judge or a politician? Regulated my country, and even more regulated in some other countries. Enough to convince a banker to wash that dirty money through their legitimate banks